Hola, and welcome to the inaugural episode of The Get Down. I am Ritzy P. So in each episode, we'll have a segment called All Things Butterscotch with the CEO and managing editor of Butterscotch Media, Clev Messidor. In this episode, we'll discuss what to expect when it comes to The Get Down as a podcast as a whole. Our inaugural guest is Judy Mam, writer and co-founder of Data.Art. We'll be discussing the 10th anniversary of Data.Art and how that all started, how Data was the first to code royalties for artists' NFTs, the first, not one of the first, but the first. And also her book, which is the first novel to be published as an NFT, and so much more. So now let's get into all things butterscotch with Clev Messidor. Clev!
Oh my God, I can't believe we're live.
We're live.
You know what's interesting? When I became a Forbes contributor over a year ago, my first article was about data, and I interviewed Judy and Beatrice. So it's so amazing to have it come full circle that they're the first guests. Well, Judy's the first guest for the podcast.
Right. Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, full circle. I love those full circle moments, all meant to be. So we will kick off most episodes with this segment, All Things Butterscotch. So what should the audience expect?
The goal of this segment is actually to tell the audience about what's happening within Butterscotch Media beyond the podcast. Because, the audience should know we have a newsletter that they can subscribe to. It's a tip sheet. It comes out weekly. It's called Shoes. We're also doing live events, right? We're heading to Consensus, which is a big blockchain conference in Austin, and we'll be doing events there. And our big signature inaugural live event will actually be at the DNC for the Chicago convention in August. Right? We're not doing a political event. We're going to do a fireside chat to actually talk about the future of policy. So Butterscotch Media, is about telling our stories. It's really about, putting a spotlight on inclusion in Web3 and DeFi, and we do that in multiple ways. The podcast is just one of them, but I want to come on each episode to let people know what else is happening.
No, that's exciting. And, every episode we're going to be saluting our guest as king or queen. So let's discuss the butterscotch origin of this and why we're doing that.
Yeah. So the Get Down, the name of this podcast is actually fashioned after a Netflix episode on hip hop that aired a few years ago. It was called The Get Down. And in The Get Down, they were in the Bronx, and there was a young teenage couple, and the young guy wrote a poem for the girl, calling her my butterscotch queen. That always stayed with me. So when I was coming up with the concept of butterscotch and of the media platform and what to name it, butterscotch just came to mind. And I was like, yes, that's the name of it. And then the name of the podcast is just paying homage to that. So in the poem, he asked her to be his butterscotch queen. So I felt like all of our guests, we should ask them to be our butterscotch kings and queens.
Right. Oh, I love that. I love how it's all tied in. And I love how we're here because of hip hop, because it's so important to both of us and so many in our community. So I love that. You mentioned the tip sheet, the newsletter, Choose, right? If you guys aren't subscribed, if you haven't subscribed to it, you need to do that. You often note that crypto is not a monolith. This is a core reason why you created Butterscotch Media. Tell us more.
Yeah, and this audience is going to hear that throughout episodes because crypto is not a monolith, right? Regardless of what people see in the media, right? They don't see any diversity. They primarily see white males in the media and a few white women. Even in Washington, when you look at the hearings and the debates, it's mostly cast as a majority Caucasian male industry, but that is not true. The earliest and largest adopters are communities of color. And there are segments and communities within Web3 and DeFi, and we want to pay homage to all of those. So, we're going to be focusing on the Black communities in crypto, the Latino communities, but also the indigenous communities. And as all of this is playing out differently across these communities. So we want to honor that. And so it's not a monolith, right? We can't just say, oh, it's a nice, whatever we do for the Black community, we just do for the Latino community and the indigenous community. No, we're taking great steps to tell those stories and understand that they play out differently across communities, and we're going to honor that.
Right. So nuanced. So this is a great way for us to collect data and tell those stories so that we could see how we could all be better served. So you mentioned before that it's a full circle moment that the first time you wrote for Forbes, you interviewed Judy and her crypto art ecosystem data. So what are you excited about today's convo with her?
Oh my God, I'm going to geek out listening to your conversation with her because, Judy and Beatriz Ramos, they are so amazing. And their story doesn't get enough coverage, as I was just saying. The contributions that they've made that actually led to not just the NFT community, but the crypto art community. And for them, it was never about making making a lot of money. Right? People always claim that, that communities of color are being brought down to this whole get rich scheme thing. But for Data, their goal was about empowering people. So for them, the technology was really about how do we get the tools in the hands of the people that need to profit however they define profit. So I'm excited that Butterscotch Media will be able to tell their story and that our podcast audience will be able to hear about this incredible story that should be told, that we should hear about in the media. So for me, for this audience, I encourage them, oh my God, after this episode, go ahead and go to their website. They've written books. Books have been written about them. They've exhibited across the world. So I'm very excited, and I'm thrilled and honored that Judy said yes and that she could be our inaugural guest for the podcast.
Amazing. Love the full circle moment. Thank you, Clev, for allowing me to be a part of this journey with the Get Down. And I look forward to our next discussion about all things butterscotch.
Oh my God. Thank you, Ritzy P, for being our host. You are already an award-winning podcaster and do so much, but I knew it was important to have the right voice to tell those stories and to really honor and capture these innovators and creators. And so grateful that you said yes and excited by all of the greatness you'll bring to each episode.
Thank you. Let's welcome our butterscotch queen, Judy Mam. She's the writer and co-founder of Data.Art. She's born and raised in Mexico City, but has been a New Yorker since 1992. Her project, Data's Creeps and Weirdos project, was the first NFT project to encode royalties for artists. She's also the writer of Quien Te Manda, Serves You Right, the first novel published as an NFT back in September 2022. Welcome, Judy. How are you? ¿Cómo estás?
Super happy to be here. Muchas gracias por tenerme aquí. I'm super happy to chat today.
So, Judy, let's start with felicidades. Congratulations on the 10th anniversary of Data. Let's begin by going back to when you and Beatriz Ramos came together to create Data. So why don't you go ahead and tell us what Data is and how it all started?
Sure. Dada is a very special, I think it's a very special community and a very special platform where people speak to each other through drawings. And we founded it in 2012. But in 2014, we did the platform as it's known today. So we celebrate the 10th anniversary of the platform as it's known today. It is a place, as I said, it's where people can make drawings digitally, post them, and then somebody else replies with another drawing. And Bea came to me back in the day in 2012. We had actually collaborated together because I used to be an advertising agency creative director. at the time. And I used to hire Bea. She had a wonderful animation and production studio called Dancing Diablo, and they used to do wonderful work for us. And years later, when I had left the agency, she approached me and said that she wanted to do a startup for artists. And she wanted actually to empower artists to together kind of marshal resources so that they could do better as a community, because being an artist is a really tough profession. And so that was the initial kind of like the initial vision of Dada, which is the same, hasn't changed. And so I was really interested, and I became the co-founder. At first, it was going to be something like, you could post your work and then the community would like it and maybe spread the word. But then we realized that that wasn't really going to scale, or that wasn't going to work, because there were already things that were a little bit like that out there. And Bea, who is an artist, said, what we need to do is to give artists the tools to do what they do best. And that way they can actually kind of like support each other in some way. So she said, we're going to have to ask people to draw. And then people are going to reply with a drawing. They're going to communicate visually. They're going to have visual conversations. And at the time, and I think still today, it was a very audacious thing to do, because in 2012, 2014, it was the rise of social media, and, everybody was like super kind of maybe obsessed with Facebook. And I think Instagram was coming out at some point, but it was what we wanted to do was really for people to express themselves by art, with art, and to create bonds between them through art, which is very different from just giving a like or like a little heart and you call it a day, right? So everything about Dada was very different. Everything used to be kind of, and still is vertical, you scroll vertically. And I said, no, this is a conversation, so it needs to be horizontal because it's art. And so I think that Dada was a very innovative platform. And to this day, we haven't seen anything remotely like it. So that's the genesis of it.
Wow, you've been in this space for such a long time. And I love how you mentioned that it's a bonding experience, because as we know, music, art, anything creative is universal. So there could be someone from another part of the world that maybe verbally we wouldn't be able to communicate, but with the sentiment and the feeling and the vibe of art, you can really bond in ways that maybe verbally is not possible. So I love that. And so Data is one of the first projects to code royalties for artists in NFTs. That doesn't get enough attention. This is very important, especially since you started such a long time ago. So you paved the way for the booming NFT market that we know and love today. So tell us about what is your why? Why did that happen? And why is that very important?
Well, it's precisely one of the things that I wanted to mention was that at first, when we started Dada in 2014, the platform with people from all over the world drawing, what we also wanted was for artists, like the mission was not only to empower artists to create community together and to kind of support each other, but we actually wanted to capture the value that artists create and to distribute that value more fairly. And at the time, before we became aware of blockchain, it was impossible to monetize any digital content, because digital content is infinitely reproducible and it had zero value. And so we were trying, like different approaches of how could we capture the value of the beautiful art that was being created by people from all over the world in the platform. And we tried different things, and none of them were either interesting enough or scalable enough or profitable enough. And then in 2017, we started hearing about this weird kind of like crypto art. I don't think it was even called that then, but the rare pepes. And we started hearing about blockchain, which is very esoteric technology. And Bea went to the Ethereal Summit in March of 2017. And she came back saying, this is what we need to do. Because she understood the potential for actually being able to capture the value of digital art through this technology. And we actually created our first collection of NFTs, the Creeps and Weirdos, by October of 2017. So in that 5 months or 6 months, we did get the smart contracts from the CryptoPunks, because it was so early at the time that I think Bea found them on LinkedIn, one of the founders of the CryptoPunks, John, on LinkedIn, and she sent him a message, and 5 minutes later we were having a conversation with him, because it was just so new and there were very few instances of, there had been artists experimenting, but there were very few instances of projects using blockchain for art. And so we created this collection, which was a curated collection of 108 drawings by 30 different artists, mostly at the time artists from Latin America. And we took the CryptoPunks smart contract of like their autonomous marketplace and how it worked, and we adapted it to include royalties for artists. And we were the first people to do that. Not one of the first people, but I really believe that we were
the first.
We haven't heard otherwise, like the first platform to code royalties for artists, because at the time we felt, well, we have a community of artists. Dada is all about collaboration, about community. It's not about individual. I mean, individual artists can create their amazing individual art, but it's really about community and collaboration. And we felt, we didn't know if it was going ever to be a thing, crypto art, but we thought in case it does take off, it would be fair for the artist, for the individual artist, to get a royalty if we ever sell, the conversations, or if we ever sell these. They weren't called NFTs at the time. They were called either crypto art or, rare art. We felt that would be fair. And so we did code royalties for artists then.
That is amazing. Thank you so much for even thinking that way and making it happen and reaching out. This is what I love about this community, especially I felt like I'm early coming in at 2021, but when you were that early and you reached out within 5 minutes, boom, you guys shared information, this new technology, because it's collaboration, it's not competition. And you thought of how can this be sustainable for artists? And I think that's the beauty of blockchain and emerging tech is we don't have to keep doing what has been antiquated. We can create something really new and break systems down. So thank you so much. And let's make sure that the people that are watching or listening understand not one, but the first.
We believe so.
Let's
we
make
haven't
sure people
heard,
understand
we
that.
haven't heard like any evidence to the contrary. So of course, if somebody did it before, we'd be happy to learn about it. But that we know, yes. You have to understand that at the time, all this collaboration and all, it was very experimental because there was no real market for crypto art. No one thought that anyone was going to pay a lot of money for these things. But what was fun was to discover the technology and play around with the technology and see what the technology could do, and the promise of what it could do for artists or even for collectors or for creating a whole new category of art. That was what was very exciting to us.
Right. That's amazing. So, Dada has launched a lot of projects that have shaped the industry as we know it today. What is the process like for launching a new project today?
Well, it's really interesting that you ask this because we started out like as a more conventional startup. We went to accelerators. We were looking for investment and stuff like that. But once we learned about blockchain and we saw the potential for decentralization, and we saw that actually the potential for monetizing something independently. We also saw when you are in this kind of technology, Web3, and the ethos of some of this technology, which is truly kind of like to make things more horizontal, more decentralized, maybe even more democratic. We kind of changed the way we worked, and we wrote this paper called The Invisible Economy in 2019, where, we just investigated like what it would be like to have an economy, a sustainable economy for artists based more on intrinsic motivations, not on market rules. So just to make a long story short, that really influenced the way that we actually think about projects. And basically, we have a community in which anyone who wants can participate. We have these sessions that we do where, we may come up with things. At the beginning, we really were very, very experimental, and Bea was coming up with a number of things. And kind of like every time that there was a little bit push in the technology, then we would experiment with it. So like when the 721 standard came in, then we made experiments with that. We were experimenting in ways of like, maybe issuing collections and the kinds of how we're going to charge for them, or are we going to give them for people to claim. We also experimented with GANs, which like autonomous artists, which is something that we're still doing. And at the time, before we became more of a community with more people involved, and by that I mean not only artists, but other technologists, economists, people like we have an ethnographer who collaborates with us. It became more organic to just have these sessions in which we would talk about the invisible economy, talk about tokenomics, talk about alternative ways of sustaining a community like that. And now it's kind of like that. It's a little bit more community oriented. We don't vote. We don't have a DAO. We actually discuss things and come to conclusions, and we deliberate things and we make decisions communally. It's a very unique form of governance, I have to say.
That's wonderful to hear, because it sounds like you evolve as the actual community evolves, the technology evolves. And I think that's a great way to grow, and you don't stay stagnant and so rigid and like, this is what we do, this is our plan, and this is what we have to do. And I love that it keeps evolving because it keeps it fresh and you bring in new people and ideas. So that's fantastic. So above and beyond being a founder of this groundbreaking project, you're also a writer. So you published the first novel that's published as an NFT entitled Quien Te Manda, and it's in English. The title is Serves You Right, back in September 2022. What was that process like?
I was, I think, a writer before I became a founder, to be honest. It's like, to me, being a founder of Dada and being in this tech world was not in my bingo card, as they said. I never thought that I would be part of like a technological thing, because I'm a writer and was always really bad at math and science and stuff like that. But because of my experience being a founder of Dada, I could see the potential for other ways in which NFTs could be used in other artistic ways. And I was very influenced by the people who were doing poetry. There were people who had been issuing poetry NFTs, like Ana Maria Caballero and Sasha Stiles and other people like that. And I was thinking, well, if you could make a poem an NFT, you can make literary NFTs. Actually, the novel was published in Spanish by Editorial Ferragosto in Spain, and that was like in 2021. And it was actually Bea's idea. She said, you should turn the novel into an NFT. And I spoke to my editor, and he came from digital publishing, which is not, it's something completely different because it's not Web3. But the minute I said, maybe we should do this as an NFT, he immediately said, yes. He understood the potential. So the reason why we say it was the first novel published as an NFT is because there have been other instances of like somebody takes a PDF and puts a token, attaches a token to it. But what we did was very different. It's not a PDF. The book is designed as an NFT. It has an animated cover. It has this cover art by Mojarra Gonzalez, who is a wonderful Mexican artist who also started in Dada. It has like this kind of interactive index, and then it's like a digital reading experience. And you can read it because it's on the blockchain. You can read it as an Arweave file, and it's available for anyone to read for free, but you can also collect it. It was very challenging because when we started it, it was difficult to find a platform where that would like accept the kind of files that you use, because usually crypto art is JPEGs or GIFs or video or stuff like that, but this needed something else. So it took a while to get it right and to get it, It was very experimental when we did it in Spanish, but I also have to say that we insisted on doing it in Spanish first because we felt like the crypto world is already too Anglo-centric in a way, and that it was important that the book that had come out in Spanish originally, which is my native language, should come out as an NFT in Spanish first in 2022. So then we did a translation. I translated it myself. And then it's funny because when we were ready to send the translation to be created as an NFT, I looked at it and I wasn't super happy about it. It felt a little bit clunky, my own work. And so we really didn't have time. So I actually used ChatGPT to do the copy editing. And it was really funny because part of it, like 70%, it was very helpful. But another part was like the novel has some like erotic content and ChatGPT was like not having it. And it was really super fun. But in the end, like just to say that it has been like very, using the technology to further the literature. And so we did the translation and we actually issued it in 2023. You can get both versions. If you go to ferragosto.xyz, there's the version in English. You don't have to collect it. You can read it for free in the link, the Arweave link, but you can also collect the novel, which I think is a beautiful object. Because I really believe that books or literature could become content that is also has like a component of art in it. So the aim of Ferragosto, which is to publish NFTs, whether it's one short story or one poem or one novel or essays or whatever, but also with art curated by me, because the kind of like the marriage between the art and like the art, the cover art, or however other creative things we can do for the books, and the content and the text is also really something that we can do in blockchain. And the beautiful thing is also that in our book contract, the collaborators of the book, for instance, the artist, but also the designer, anyone who collaborates in the book also can get, their royalties and they can get their distributions as well. So that's the beauty also of the blockchain, where you can reward or be more fair to collaborators more instantly, no?
Right. Yeah, that's beautiful. So you're breaking it down to us and telling us that you're an innovator. You've created these amazing things, and I'm sure there's several illustrators, book designers that are watching or listening that are like, wow, this is amazing, because they get paid one-off, like work for hire when it comes to a book. And I love that you're keeping the tradition of a book, especially if it has art, as a whole package, a whole experience, right? Because people take time to curate and design or illustrate a cover, because that says a lot about what's inside. And then especially if you're talking about art and you're saying that you had to find a way to get it on the blockchain so that it represented itself in the way and how you envisioned it, basically. So that's fantastic. Going back to, celebrating the 10th anniversary, you've been celebrating on a global stage. You guys are leveraging AI more and more. As you said, you use ChatGPT to edit the English version. What are some other highlights and other ways that you're utilizing AI right now?
Well, back in 2019, and in blockchain time, this is start sounding like prehistory. We were very interested in GANs, generative adversarial networks. There was art being made, generative art being made by people like Robbie Barrett and like Elena Sarin and Sofia Crespo. And they were using this technology to create art. And we started experimenting with GANs as well. And together with a roboticist called Alex Riven, he taught a GAN to draw from the data set of drawings that we had in Dada at the time, which were, at the time, we had like 115,000 drawings. So he started like feeding this GAN, the Dada drawings. And we created a GAN called Dadagan, which was actually like an automated machine that was learning to draw from the drawings of Dada. And we issued its first collection in 2019. And since then, of course, the technology of artificial intelligence, of course, has evolved in leaps and bounds. So we are updating Dadagan to use other technologies, like not so much generative adversarial networks. That now it's a kind of like a technology that feels very outdated. Although I really like it because it's really clunky. But with DALI or the Mid Journey or all those new tools, we have been teaching Dadagan with those new tools, but also we want to actually create a completely automated and completely almost autonomous, independent artist that can sell its own work, that can have its own Twitter account. So we're actually trying to do like this artist persona whose name is Dadagan, who is also, it's a very experimental artist, but at the same time, it also is a commentary on the market, the art market in crypto, which can be, even though, crypto art has been a boon for a lot of artists, the market is very brutal and it takes a big toll on individual artists. So we want Dadagan to be kind of like an artist that participates in the market, but at the same time has some sort of like conceptual commentary on it. So that we've been busy training it, and it has performed in certain places and it has had exhibitions and stuff. So it's an evolving project.
Wow, that's so fascinating. So before we leave, what is anything you want to compel the audience to consider in today's market?
Well, I think that crypto art is not known by a lot of people. I would love, the entire topic of crypto is treated in the media in a very negative way. Sometimes the media doesn't quite understand how blockchain, not how blockchain works, but what crypto can do for people. So it's usually the narrative. It's a scam, or it's a Ponzi scheme, or crypto art is like a speculative and, or it's a casino, or they don't really understand how it can create community, how it has lifted so many artists around the world to a different place, not only economically, but also community-wise, finding this tribe of very diverse people from all over the world, also in countries where there's not necessarily, super developed countries. And what I would like for people to understand is that, NFTs have a really bad name, and it's completely, it's really unfair in a way, because there's like everything. There's bad NFTs or like, mediocre NFTs, and there's great NFT art. So what I would like people to consider is to be more receptive and to try to look for better and more positive stories about this technology, because it's a technology that could impact people in so many ways. I know Clef has been doing the Lord's work in this way. And so that's what I would like encourage people to look at, come to Data.Art and, play around with it, but also to be a little bit more open about NFTs and how they can actually be much more than what they're valued at in terms of economic or financial value. No?
Yes, definitely. I mean, the economic, social, and creative empowerment that they can bring is huge, and changing a life of one artist in certain areas of the world can change entire communities. And I think that that's kind of more of the narrative and what we need to have out there. Share stories like you and your community, what you guys are doing, but let people know that it equals opportunities and possibilities that we could have never imagined, because these artists that are, have adopted this early and have been in part of communities such as yours and have seen such a growth with visibility and financial, empowerment, they would have never seen that at all with the, antiquated, traditional art institutions. They wouldn't even been considered. They wouldn't even been, the art wouldn't have been viewed. And now they're on a global stage. I mean, it's literally changing lives and communities. And I think that's very important. So thank you so much for that, for everything that you and Beatriz are doing. I mean, you guys are innovators. You guys are thinking. And I think it also is helpful that you both are creatives. She's a visual. She sounds like she's more visual. You're saying she's an artist. That sounds like you're an artist too. You're all creative. And then bringing the tech side and experimenting and see what are the innovative ways to help so many. So thank you so much for that. Before we leave, what's a fun fact that people should know about you, Judy?
Well, I think it's kind of fun and interesting that I am Mexico. I am from Mexico. I'm also Jewish. So, when you said like women of color, well, you can look at me. I'm like, I don't know what color, how much a woman of color I am, but I can say that I am certainly a very interesting hybrid, right? And another fun fact is that I've been writing about movies for a long time. I'm a film reviewer. Movies are really like my passion. And so that's another thing that I'm a writer, but I also have my blog called I've Had It with Hollywood, my blog on Medium, where I've written almost like 1,000 reviews of movies. I always think that we are more than the sum of our parts, and that people are always very fascinating because, you can always find, some interesting passion or interesting background. And that's always fascinating to me.
Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your story and reminding the folks that you're the first in a lot of different, areas. We appreciate that. So thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. Let me know if there's anything else I can do. I'm looking forward to listening and to sharing this. And thank you for what you're doing for the space, because it's really important that we further a positive narrative, women, people from all over the world, and the good aspects of the technology.
So thank you to our Butterscotch Queens and Kings for being with us today, our inaugural episode. Our next episode will be a special intimate conversation between Cleve Mesidor and Lule Demisi, CEO of eToro US. Until next timers, thank you.